I look back on the last 35 years as a Christian on the worst day, and I've had some tough days. Everybody does. I wouldn't trade for the best days, flying on Air Force One and hearing "Hail to the Chief." All the stuff that goes with the droppings of power. It's empty, it's meaningless.
Chuck Colson, the infamous Watergate hatchet man, chief counsel to President Richard Nixon, learned many years ago that what appears important is really of no value at all. He learned this lesson in 1974 when he was indicted for conspiring to cover up the Watergate burglary.
I was stripped of everything, public enemy number one, and thrown into a prison. And that too was a great experience. I look back on it and I realize I used to look at life from the top looking down. In prison you learn to look at life from the underside and you see people hurting and suffering, and it has changed my whole perspective.
I remember looking back at that historically and all the events surrounding Watergate and then your profession of faith coming out. And I was a skeptic. I was not walking with Jesus at the time. I said, oh, here we go, another one of those.
Well, you weren't alone.
Yeah,
there were like
foxhole conversion. It lasted for 35 years.
Yep. People kept saying to me, you know, how do we know you're for real? I said, don't judge me now. Judge me 10 years from now. See what I'm doing 10 years from now. Mm. And what I realized was that when God got his hand on my life, there was no turning back. I wouldn't turn back for anything in the world. I think about that night in the driveway when I cried out to God and I realized for the first time what a sinner I was. And I realized, because I'd just learned it from the man who witnessed to me, that Christ died on the cross for my sins. And I felt so free, but so grateful to God that ever since I'll do anything God calls me to do.
What God called Chuck to do is prison fellowship, a ministry working in 113 countries, committed to prison reform and prisoner rehabilitation. It was birthed because of Chuck's incarceration. He's also written a dozen books. The Faith Given Once for All is his most recent.
This book is a plea, a wake-up call to the church. We got to start being Christians, and Christians mean that we know what we believe, and we know why we believe it, and we know why it matters, and we can A, live it, and B, defend it.
Right. Be able to give an answer for the hope that's within us, for each one of us.
Because, Scott, what's happening today is Christianity is being caricatured by people outside of Christianity because they look at our weaknesses and they exaggerate them. And then you've got this whole flood of atheists who are writing best-selling books, and they're defining Christianity. Why? Because all the studies show that most Christians don't know the doctrines they believe. So what I've done in this book is to try to take the simple, basic truths, relate them back to the original church, the early church, the apostles' teaching, the Nicene Creed, and show how all of them are shared by all Christians, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, and say, we gotta know these basics, and if we know these basics, we will be able to defend ourselves in the culture, give a reason for the hope which is within us, but with gentleness and reverence, which is very important. Right. We often don't do that.
I could extract many things from this book. You talk about materialism, you talk about status for power, business ethics or the lack thereof, or no-fault divorce, as if there could be such a thing. All this is happening not only in society, but in our churches.
Well, it's happening in the churches, and because it's happening in the churches, it's happening in the society. A phrase that I hope our viewers will ponder for a moment and think about. In fact, I hope when I say it, it will haunt anybody watching this program.
I don't know if I want to hear this.
Right. Culture is religion incarnate, because religion, the cult, creates the culture. So what created the greatness of Western culture was the Christian church. But when the church is sick, then the culture is going to be sick. So we look around us and we say, isn't this awful? Abortions, bad court decisions, and the breakup of the family, and the social decay. And look, I got out of prison 32 years ago. There were 229,000 people in prison. Now there are 2.3 million. We are seeing the social costs of the breakup of the family. We are seeing moral decay in our society, and we point our finger at those nasty liberals who have done this to us. No, point your finger right here. Right. If we're being the church, that doesn't happen to a culture.
Today, at 76 years old, the only thing that matters to Chuck Colson is having the right relationship with Jesus Christ and serving the one who saved him 35 years ago.
Are you a fulfilled man?
I'm fulfilled, man.
Fulfilled man?
I tell you, one of the most wonderful things about being a Christian is that I don't ever get up in the morning and wonder if I'm going to do anything today or if what I'm doing matters. I live every day to the fullest because I can live it for Christ. And I know no matter what I do today, whether it's just in my, maybe it's just in my prayer time, I'm going to do something to advance the kingdom of God. Now, does that make you fulfilled? You bet it does. And it gives you joy about living.